Hi everybody, this is Brooke Lyle and I'm back making another video. So I've been gone for the last 10 days and I want to just explain what's been going on really the last week or so, since it has not been normal for me at all. It has been 0% normal for me, and I'll talk about it as this video goes along. But previous kind of right around Halloween, November 1st, periods like that, kind of first week of November, normally I watch the World Series end, talk about it, and then I go on and I talk usually talk football, and I've hardly talked any football the last 6 weeks. Getting ready for I've been talking baseball all of October, and this October was not even a normal baseball October for me, and the reason why is my Nationals, and I made that quite clear during all my videos. But my Washington Nationals have won the World Series for the first time in their franchise history. And it was very exciting. It's very exciting since for many years. Okay, I'm gonna be clear. I'm a huge baseball fan. I try to watch every Nationals game that I can. I definitely watch well over 100 games a year, probably 9 innings if I'd estimate, 130, 140, I don't know for sure. But I try to watch them as much as possible. In addition to that, I'm also the MLB TV app. I'm a Nationals fan. Where I watch other teams all the time too. If it's day baseball in the summertime, you know don't have anything to do, I'm gonna watch baseball, right? And I watch West Coast games, Dodgers games, and I try to watch every bit of the playoffs as possible. Teams that aren't the Nationals, in fact, in 2018 or whatever year it is, the Nationals aren't in it. And in years past, the Nationals were eliminated in the LDS series. In LDS, I watched all the LCS and the World Series that I could in years past when the Nationals weren't there. Well, this year was different. And the reason why it was different is the Nationals just had a great run. Had a great run. And yeah, I could have made a video as soon as the Nationals won the World Series. I would have been really excited and fired up. And I still am excited. Since, whenever and I'm going to try to get some World Series gear. I want to get a few World Series cups, shirts. Whenever I turn on my phone or whatever, look at my phone, I'm reminded the Nationals have won the World Series. I mean, you can see my Facebook page. I put these videos on Facebook. I've posted a bunch of stuff on the Nationals winning the World Series. So I just having to say, okay, I wonder what I've said on Facebook. Kind of looking back at things over the years, I can say, oh, I said this in 2019. The Nationals won the World Series. Just kind of good memories and things like that. But to be honest, it meant a lot to me, since I'm going to say something right now. I'm young. I'm 22. Yet throughout my childhood, when I was in elementary school, probably starting in third, fourth grade, probably the summer of 2008, I started watching the Nationals, and really, a little bit really in 2009 is when I really took off as a fan of that team. I watched them all summer, all fall. They were terrible that year. Strasburg, I remember, came up right before I graduated from elementary school and middle school. They were bad. And then 8th grade, all of a sudden they had that magical summer of 2012. I thought that those would be the years. And throughout high school, I thought the Nationals were going to win the World Series. And when I graduated from high school, my first year out of high school, the first summer out of high school, I had the Nationals. I could relax all summer because I knew the Nationals were going to go to the playoffs, and I was thinking World Series, basically all summer. And that never came. Come playoff time, it ended. In my first year out of high school, obviously, about a year after I graduated from high school, the Capitals won the Stanley Cup, and that was very exciting. But I still always wanted the Nationals to do the same thing. And now, being about 2.5 years removed from high school, about 6 months ago, I thought, well, I just don't think this is going to be the year. Worst case scenario, when they were 19-31, I thought, well, maybe they'll fire Davey Martinez, maybe trade Max Scherzer, kind of start like a rebuild, and rebuild. and maybe you're not in the playoffs for a few years. Maybe retool the farm system that's kind of starting to weaken. And their farm system, and we can talk really a lot about that later, but it is not very good right now, to be honest. It is not very good. But that doesn't matter right now. They just won the World Series. But since I thought, well, I think it'll be probably a few more years before I see the World Series. I thought it's probably not going to be this year, but they slowly got better. Really, June is that month where you started noticing. Come 4th of July, I thought, they can actually make it to the playoffs. But I wasn't thinking World Series either. Just make it to the playoffs this year. They sat out last year. Just whatever you do, just make it to the playoffs. I'll be happy if you make it to the wild card game. Just do that. I wasn't thinking World Series. I wasn't thinking World Series and 4th of July. I mean, I'm going to be honest. On 4th of July, I was there watching the fireworks, and I think I remember this now that I think clearly about it. I was imagining what if they won the World Series. I was imagining them winning the World Series, just kind of in the moment, enjoying the fireworks, having fun, feeling fired up. I was thinking, what if they won the World Series this year? What if they won the World Series? And throughout my lifetime, even in spring training this year, I had visions of them winning the World Series, and maybe I got myself fired up in them winning the World Series. And then, and this video is not a baseball video. I'm not talking about baseball. This video, I'm sorry, is really more about me and the Nationals winning the World Series. So, again, I had to make a video about this. But anyways, I imagine what it would be like. And then August came. They're in the wild card race. And then come September, I thought, what if they could actually catch the Braves? Well, basically by the first week of September, by the time the NFL season really got started, kind of that point in time, I was there early September, about 2 months ago now. They lost 3 in a row to the Braves, and they'd fallen 10 games out of the division. And going into September, I was almost certain they were going to make it to the playoffs. I knew, okay, just don't collapse, don't do anything, just make it to the playoffs, and we'll see what happens. Just get in, because I still wasn't thinking World Series. I was just thinking maybe they can get to the NLCS. Who knows? Just get in the playoffs and just see what happens, right? Well, I had kind of felt defeated since I was a fan at that game. I watched them play against the Braves. I was there at SunTrust Park. I was there on September 5th and September 7th. And when they lost on the 7th, walking out of the stadium, I was thinking, wow. I kind of felt defeated at that point. I was thinking, they're not going to win the division. I was thinking, what if they come back here for the NLCS? They're not going to win the division, but I thought something told me this is going to be a successful run. And by the time mid-September approached, kind of going into late September, 10 days left to play, I was thinking, oh no, please don't miss the playoffs. We've come so far. Just make it in the playoffs. Get in. And they had the run of a lifetime. They won their last 8 games of the regular season, all at Nationals Park. They clinched a spot in the playoffs on the 24th. I was so happy that night. I was happy they were going to the playoffs. Was I thinking World Series? Listen, in baseball, when you get into the playoffs, if you can just get in, even as a wild card team, even now as a wild card team, you just survive that game, since that game is do or die, you can win it. The Giants in 2012, 14, they also won the World Series in 2012 as a division winner. They just got into the wild card game, beat the Pirates, and the Royals also got in the wild card game that year and had a great comeback. They should have lost that game to the A's. The Royals had a magical run to the World Series by beating the Angels and O's. In fact, they won all 7 of those games. So they were 8-0 to start the playoffs. And the Giants, I think they beat, my Nationals in 2014. Very disappointing. But that doesn't matter now. That's all over. And then trying to think, who else they beat? Of course, they beat the Cardinals in 5. Madison Bumgarner series, right? Both teams got into the playoffs, met each other in the World Series, and the Giants, Madison Bumgarner pitching a huge Game 5. And I think the Royals, in Game 4, they had a lead at some point, fairly early on in the game. You thought 3-1, 3-1. Maybe they'll win the World Series tomorrow night. You get your hopes up. No. Giants were up 3-2. They won in Game 7 in Kansas City. So again, getting to the playoffs, that's what can happen. Remember the 2015 Mets? They weren't expected to go that far. They got in, went to the World Series. There's just all those stories, right? The teams that just got in, and anything can happen once you get in, right? Well, the Nationals, they're in the playoffs, so once they're in the playoffs, in that Brewers game, they almost lost that game. They almost lost the game. If they would have lost that game, if Soto doesn't get that hit, Ryan Zimmerman hits the ball maybe a little bit softer, oh, maybe it's caught by the second baseman. Or hits it, a little bit harder, maybe it's caught by the center fielder. Whatever, or shorter or further, or whatever. They more than likely lose to the Brewers. So you think how great that run was? It almost ended against the Brewers. Since I'm going to be honest, the night of the wild card game, I remember I did a preview show, right? And I was fired up, for sure. Just going into the game. I was thinking all day what was going to happen. I got out my Lucky Capitals Stanley Cup DVD. Hoping, let's get fired up for the playoffs. Maybe we can have another champion in the nation's capital. And they beat the Brewers in that game. That was just a great game. And then they went on to beat the Dodgers in 5. I'll never forget those Rendon and Kendrick home runs. Also winning Game 4 in Washington. That was a fun, stressful series. And of course the Kendrick Grand Slam. Once they beat the Dodgers, I was really fired up. In fact, I took pictures of that. And I was really fired up with them beating the Dodgers. To that point in time, I knew they've done something they never done. They're on to the NLCS. And the Cardinals series was fairly easy. I remember Sanchez, 7 2/3, no-hit innings. Max Scherzer's almost had a no-hitter through 7, struck out 11. Strasburg striking out 12. Dominant starting pitching. And they beat the Cardinals in 4. The Cardinals really not much. And they went to the World Series, and I was proud of that. And I had a week to soak in the World Series. Just soak in that they're in the World Series. I kind of had a week to relax and kind of get fired up. Knowing that the Nationals were on fire, and then they won the first 2 games in Houston. I was fired up. I was making plans for a parade. Kind of that Friday afternoon thing. Okay, they could get through tonight. Tomorrow they could be World Series champions. Well, the last one on the air 11 days ago, when they lost 3 in a row to the Astros in Houston. And I talked about it, right? So now I'm going to talk about the events of my life that preceded for when they won the World Series. So they won Game 6. That was a hard fought game. I'll never forget the Soto home run. Holby remember that. Throughout his career, he's going to hit hundreds of home runs. He might hit closer to 1,000 home runs than 0. Just saying. He might hit and just 21 years old, Juan Soto hitting a home run in the World Series. That was his 3rd home run of the series up. By the way, and then on the day, I really soaked in Tuesday thinking, well, it could end tonight. So here's what I was going to say. You know what? I don't even need to get to it if they would have lost the World Series, since I don't know what it's like to lose a championship. And hopefully I never have to find out what it's hopefully the Nationals, let's say, for the next 50 years make it 10 World Series. And then win all 10 of them. That would be great. Oh, but not that. Another point is they won Game 6 and the day of Game 7. I was just thinking all day. Today the Nationals can win the World Series. And you know what it sort of felt like since my Capitals a couple of years earlier. Now it's been almost a year and a half ago now. They had a 3-1 lead on Vegas, so obviously I had won. Since they don't play back-to-backs in hockey, they won on a Monday. June 4th, so I had the 5th, 6th, and 7th to get ready for it. I had 3 days really to get ready for and think about it, the possibilities of what could happen. And then they won that game, so again, they had 3 chances to do it, and they won on the first shot they had, so that was great. That was so much fun. This time with the Nationals, it felt kind of like Super Bowl Sunday. Or maybe the NCAA championship game where you basically knew, alright, today they can win the World Series. Today could be the day. Tonight they could be World Series champions. And if they would have lost, They had one shot. They had one shot to win the World Series and claim the World Series trophy. Like, it would have been theirs. They would have had it. And that's what would have happened. And throughout the day, I was thinking about it all day. And then all of a sudden, Jack Greinke was frustrating. They couldn't touch him. They're putting the ball in play, but they just weren't getting outs. He was efficient. Rendon hits the home run. And then Howie Kendrick's home run, where it's an opposite field home run off the foul pole. And at that moment, I think the Nationals have the lead. I'm fairly excited since they just took the lead. And all of a sudden, I'm thinking, I know they have 9 outs to go, but they don't allow another run, they can win the World Series. I have those thoughts sometimes. I had those same thoughts the night they won the pennant. If they just finish this game, they win the pennant. And it's just so unbelievable, right? And then on insurance runs, I think Soto had an RBI single. Eaton drove in 2. They're up 6-2. By the way, great job by Patrick Corbin coming in, pitching 3 innings in relief on, I guess, 3 days rest. Just again, I was kind of skeptical of him coming out of the bullpen at first, given how he pitched in Game 1 against the Dodgers and in Game 3. He just didn't perform well at all against the Dodgers in those first part early on in the series. Well, this time, he had one of the best games of really. He gave him 3 innings out of the bullpen, and then there's 3 outs in the ninth. They got the 1 out in the last out, and you know what I did when we got the last out is I filmed it with my phone. And by the way, I think I'll put it up on Facebook, since again people are going to see it anyways. I know it's going to be public, but I just want to have it on Facebook, so in case anything ever happens to my phone, I have to get a new iPhone, which I probably will, I don't know when, but fairly soon. It's like iPhone 5. I'm going to put it on Facebook so I can just watch it over and over again in case anything ever happens. So just have it on my Facebook page. But yeah, people are going to see it, I know, but it's really more for me to see. And really, some of the stuff, like the World Series stuff I put on Facebook, is really for me to see and look back later. But yeah, I know my friends, who I know will see those stuff too, I understand. But I just want to keep that stuff and preserve it. But just the video that I filmed of when the Nationals won the World Series, just kind of raw emotions, how I felt at the time. And when they first did, I couldn't believe it. I thought, did they really just do it? I dreamed of doing it my whole life for many years, that the Nationals would win the World Series. And when they actually did, I was jumping up and down. I was excited for 5 minutes. I was like, did they really just win the World Series? I was thinking that. And then I saw the World Series trophy in the locker room. It just sunk in. And that night, I'm going to be honest, describing the emotions, I could not sleep at all. I couldn't sleep that night. I mean, sometimes you have those nights where you can't sleep. You just, no matter what you try to do, you just can't. That was one of those nights. I just probably didn't fall asleep till 5 a.m. So they won the World Series. I was all fired up. Right? The next day I was fired up. They just won the World Series. And then 8 o'clock that night, I left for Washington, D.C. Less than 24 hours later, I was on my way to Washington, D.C. And Friday, just walking around Arlington, Virginia, which is right next to Washington, D.C. It's literally across the river. It's one metro stop away. Roslyn and Foggy Bottom there are very, very close. The closest inns are hardly just a few miles apart. I was walking around Arlington, even when I got to Union Station, I walked around, saw signs, even on the Washington Metro, oh, fight finished, or whatever, or just going all the way around the city. To then, on Friday as well, I walked down 15th on Constitution, all the way to 3rd on where Pennsylvania Avenue merges with Constitution Avenue, just thinking, and it hit me. Why am I here? What am I doing here? Oh yeah, The reason why I'm here is the Nationals won the World Series. That's why I was in Washington, D.C. Is the Nationals won the World Series. They got me there. They led me there. So on Friday, that's really what hit me on Friday, and then I went to the ballpark, and it really hit me even more. Wow, the Nationals won the World Series. Like I was looking at Nationals Park, and thinking, yeah, I've been there many times over the years. I went there when Trey Turner hit the walk-off home run against the White Sox on a day in June where I wasn't thinking World Series. I think at that time, I think it was June where they really started to turn it around, but still, think, wow, my team, my Nationals just won the World Series. I did a lap around the ballpark. I walked kind of a victory lap around the ballpark, it just hit me. The Nationals really did win the World Series, and then it was funny, I've also got to go to my first Caps game that night in a long time. It was against the Sabres. It was really cool to go to a Caps game again, be of Washington, D.C., and then really Saturday and Sunday. Saturday, the parade. I woke up that day, I was fired up going to bed on Friday night knowing I get to go to the parade. And I basically walked from Ballston and Arlington all the way down to I basically walked through the Clarendon district, and many of you probably don't know what I'm talking about, but some of you listeners who might be familiar with the DC area, is basically Clarendon, kind of along the metro stops. Walked into Clarendon, walked all the way down to Roslyn. I got on the train at Roslyn, last stop in Virginia, before we go to Washington D.C. on the orange, silver, blue side of things. And Nationals fans on the metro were fired up. In fact, I have a video that's about 30 seconds long of me kind of getting on the metro because I wanted to capture that moment so I could, it's one thing to have memories, but it's another, that's why I took some video. And took A, pictures, and B, video, so I could look back at those memories, say, a week later, a month later, a year later, hopefully years and years later, 10 years later, when I'm in my 30s even. So I looked at those memories and just being with the Nationals fans, and just when I got there, I walked from, I think I got off at Federal Triangle, which is on 12th and Constitution. I walked, I guess, 9 blocks all the way to 3rd, my spot where I planned on being. And just watching the parade, it hit me again. The Nationals won the World Series. And I saw hundreds, thousands of other Nationals fans wearing Nationals hats. It hit me, the Nationals won the World Series. The Nationals have won the World Series, and just seeing all the floats going by, and everybody from the players. I remember the first one was Adam Eaton. There's a lot of one, and Gerardo Parra. You look at things like, I don't care what you look at his regular stats, weren't that good. You look at analytical stuff, probably wasn't that good. But I can't tell you how valuable Gerardo Parra was to the Nationals. For him, they might have not made the playoffs. He was a huge, huge influence. He might have had more influence than anybody. He changed the culture. When they were struggling, he said, hey guys, let's just have fun. We'll be okay. Just seeing the players on the float, one float that I'll remember is Grant and Danny, who are huge Nationals fans. They love baseball. They're at 106.7 The Fan, my favorite radio station. They're kind of influential to me, since I not said this publicly, but they make me want to be a sports talk radio host one day. That's one thing I want to do, like what I'm doing right now. And again, I'll talk more normal stuff later on the show, like certain topics, like maybe even debate stuff. But doing this right now, getting on camera, talking sports, which I'll kind of hopefully prepared me for that. But yeah, I want to be a sports talk radio host, hopefully at 106.7 The Fan, my dream radio station in the dream market. Listening to them throughout this October made me want to do that even more. It kind of fired me up, gave me motivation. Seeing them honored at the parade, they're on a parade float as well. They're just sports talk radio hosts. They're very humble about it, talking about we didn't deserve this. We didn't do anything to contribute to the World Series run. And then seeing Davey Martinez with the trophy, and Ryan Zimmerman on the same float, seeing them. I saw all the notable players. I remember Rendon went by, Steven Strasburg went by. I remember his float stopped multiple times. I think he was with, um, and I got a great look at Strasburg as well. And I try to cherish every second of it. Since, yes, I can look at photos later. Yes, I can go on YouTube, and I'm sure there's, in fact, I think on Masson they have a whole version of the parade. I can look back at it again, the parade, but just being there live, I tried to cherish every second of it. Since I knew, I don't know when the Nationals won the World Series again. It could be as soon as this year, or it could be 20, 30, 40 years from now. I don't know. I don't know. That was so much fun, and just I walked around Washington, D.C. After that, I walked on the Chinatown, 7th Street. I walked down there a long time, and just walking, thinking about it. I saw Nationals fans everywhere. I was at the rally, hearing Bob and FP talk while I watched on Masson for so many years. And all of that, just everything. And then Sunday, that was really cool. Fast forward to the Capitals game against the Flames. The Nationals were there. They were honored before the game. They kind of had a pregame ceremony where they went out on the ice, and they're honored that way on the ice. They had the World Series trophy on the ice. And the really cool part is, and I was up high. I was facing away from them, so the raw footage is not very good, but there's plenty of photos throughout the internet of the Nationals and Capitals getting together. Since again, the Capitals had great support for the Nationals throughout the run. Like I remember Game 4 against the Dodgers, Alex Ovechkin, the Great Eight. Throughout the first pitch right before Game 4, they watched, and I remember when they won the World Series, they were celebrating with champagne stuff. It was almost like they won their own championship. They're celebrating someone else's championship, which that was a lot of fun to see. Just at I think it was at a sports bar in Clarendon or whatever in Arlington, and then seeing that, and then throughout the game, you had shots of the World Series trophy in their suite. You saw the Nationals on the scoreboard at Capital One. And I'll never forget this moment. One of my favorite Nationals Capitals moments since I was there, made even more special. Jacob Vrana scored a hat trick. He scored 3 goals. That's 3 goals in hockey. And people threw their hats out on the ice. And the coolest part about it is Adam Eaton was by the ice, and he held the World Series trophy out at the same time as people threw their hats on the ice. And then at intermission, I think it was at their second intermission, the Nationals got on the Zambonis. People don't know, probably many of you don't know much about hockey. It's basically in between periods. It basically clears the ice. It's basically sort of like grounds crew in baseball. But the Nationals had the World Series trophy on their Zambonis, and they had their shirts off. That was well known throughout the parade, throughout the season, especially Brian Dozier. He was most famous for taking his shirt off, so that was fun. And seeing that was one of the most fun sporting events I have ever been to in my lifetime. Probably so, just celebrating the Nationals with probably hundreds of thousands of fellow Nationals fans at the parade, and then about almost 20,000 many Capitals fans. I bet everybody in Capital One Arena was a Nationals fan as well. Being there and just seeing everything that happened, and then just celebrating with the city of Washington, D.C., and with the Nationals that weekend. That weekend was so much fun. I'll never forget that. That's what happened when the Nationals won the World Series. Since, you know what? I think about that. What if the Brewers beat them? None of that ever happens. If they lose to the Dodgers in 5, which they should have, none of that ever happens. If the Astros finish, even if the Astros win Game 7, they lose Game 7, and none of that ever happens. So just what I got to experience, all the pictures I've taken, which I'll share them out on Facebook, along with this video, is I just want to share kind of what happened during that journey through the city, just everything that I did, that I just talked about. So much fun. I'll never forget that. And the Capitals, they're fired up seeing the Nationals win the World Series, what they got to do. I hope the Capitals win another Stanley Cup this year, and I think they're in prime position to since they do that. I was also at the Capitals parade, and like I said, I learned things. So being a fan of a championship team, advice to anybody I know. Some of my followers are my Facebook friends. One of them, I'm not gonna name any names. One of them is a Blues fan and is celebrating their Stanley Cup. I know lots and lots of Braves fans. If they win the World Series, they could win the World Series next year, right? So one of my Facebook friends is also a Cardinals fan. I know a lot of Braves fans. So advice, since I've had to experience two, when you win a championship, celebrate as much as you can, and just if you're ever need something to fire you up throughout the day, like right now, just remind yourself all the Nationals have won the World Series and think back on that run. Since as soon as it's over, I remember my Capitals losing to the Hurricanes in 7 games in the first round of the playoffs. I just felt some sort of shock, like everything that I experienced over the last year was just gone, taken out right away. I just thought back to the parade and everything and all the excitement into this, and sadly, it's gonna happen to the Nationals sooner or later. When that is taken out, you just think about last year and just feel disappointed, feel empty, like, wow, this is not going to happen again. That was rough. So the Nationals, I'm going to just celebrate this during Thanksgiving time, during the holidays, right around New Year's time, and, throughout next summer, during the springtime. I'm just going to think about last year's team. I'm going to go on MLB TV. I'm going to rewatch some regular season moments, obviously the playoffs. In fact, here's what I'm going to do. Since I like sports announcing, this is a formal announcement, I am going to try to play-by-play and relive that entire run of the Nationals run as kind of from the point of a broadcaster. What Charlie and Dave Jagler experienced, who were the only announcers who got to experience every single game of this, since they had different TBS announcers in the early on, and obviously Joe Buck and stuff. So I'm going to rewatch the World Series. I'm going to rewatch this playoff run. I'm going to try to enjoy this as much as I can, since there'll be that moment. Whereas the Phillies, because no team has repeated in 20 years. I remember the Phillies, they lost to the Yankees in the 2009 World Series just after winning it, or whoever, or whether you lose in the ALCS, or whether you don't make it to the playoffs at all. The moment you know you're not going to be a champion, I'll think back about what happened the last year, what's happening right now, and it'll feel different. So I'm just gonna advice for fans. I'm just gonna enjoy every second of being a champion until that is no longer the case and it is somebody else's turn. That's what it's like. So again, just the parade in general is just so much fun, being a gathering of hundreds of thousands or whatever, many people that are fans of your team, being there with them and getting to celebrate and that was so much fun. I'll never forget being at the parade, since that's just all I wanted to do. I just really wanted to go to the parade, and I got to do that. I got to experience 2 championships, and hopefully the Capitals as the national season starts, hopefully the Capitals will be getting fired up for another run. I've decided, and the Wizards, it's going to be a long time. They're just entering a rebuild right now, what they're doing before wasn't working when they came up short in the playoffs, so maybe what they're doing now will change things. Who knows? It's very hard in the NBA. It's probably the hardest of any of the 4 major sports to win a championship, since you have to get very lucky, and it seems like it's either dynasty or nothing, especially at the Warriors. Like, it is very hard to get there, and you need to have a superstar player. You have to, almost always. And then the Redskins, who I've never really been a fan of them, been more of a Ravens fan. I think I'll root for the Redskins. I hope they win. I hope they win another Lombardi Trophy. That would be nice. It's been a long time. I want Washington D.C. to be Boston. What Boston was, say, in the 2000s and 2010s, where they were winning championship after championship. While I like the Nationals and Capitals the most, I want to see the Wizards win an NBA title for sure. And that's what John Wall said when he's interviewed the other night on. I happened to watch the interview live when I think it was Kentucky and Michigan State playing. He said he wanted to bring a championship back to Washington, so I hope that works out for John Wall. And so we'll see. It'll be nice to go to parades and be at parades and I know Grant and Danny had a blast. I was listening to them on the radio during the day live. I have their podcast. I just listened to them. It was just so much fun listening to them. I didn't tell them this on air. I called in last Friday where I was and said I was going to the parade, but it was just so much fun. And I soaked in every minute from the start of the wild card game, on the day of the wild card game, all the way back on November 1st or October 1st, all the way to the parade. All those moments, I soaked in every moment of it. And looking back, this is just so special. I'll think about this a lot. This, again, leading up to Thanksgiving, leading up to the holidays, into the New Year's, during spring training, throughout the summer. Just all those moments I'll think about, and then hopefully next fall, hopefully the Nationals go back to back. That would be great. That would be so great if they could go back to back and do it all over again. But knowing baseball, it has been 20 years now. It'll be interesting, and also it's the closing of a decade. This is the end of baseball in the 2010s. It's about to be 2020. It's gonna be a new decade soon. So it's been a fun decade of baseball, and just it's been so great seeing the Nationals win the World Series. Okay, so I've not been normal in my talk stuff. Next week, I'm gonna try to talk the NFL again. Maybe off-season MLB news, try to find stories and talk about that as well, and maybe other stuff, but I'll try to go back to my normal kind of first take or sports talk radio segments where I try to form an opinion and debate something. I will try to do that. Next week I'll try to go back to normal format, since the last week or so has not been normal for me at all. So yes, I'm very excited the Nationals have won the World Series. Just so great. I'm so glad I got to see that. Feel really good about that right now. So I've been talking about that and kind of how I felt. And again, now I think I'll transition back into normal stuff next week. So and above all, I really enjoy making these videos. I'd still be making these videos even if the Nationals lost to the Brewers. I would have still talked postseason baseball. I would have still done those things, right? So things haven't changed. I'm going to keep making these videos, but I would have not, for example, the Nationals lost to the Brewers, made that Nationals history of Washington baseball in Washington D.C. and the Nationals video. That wouldn't have come up. I wouldn't have talked about the Nationals for the last month. I would have instead I might have spent a month talking about the Dodgers or whoever. If the Astros would have won the World Series, I would have talked about that briefly. And yes, I would have been disappointed. So it's been fun making these videos, and I look forward to making many more videos. So thank you for watching this video, and we will see you next time.